Oseo Tehiju, this is Firebird Grey Wolf from Native Voices Turtle Island TV. And today we have a very special guest. Her name is Karen Coyle, and Coy, and she is an author and I guess you would say family genealogist, family historian.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So, Karen, before I ask you certain questions, can you tell me a little bit about your younger years and how you came into your discovery?
Okay, so this won't sound crazy to some, but very crazy to others. That I grew up believing I was African American, quote unquote, right? And that I had some Native American ancestry on this side of the family and that side of the family. And I can remember being very young, and my grandmother took my sister and I to a relative's house in Montclair, New Jersey. And there were two young people around our age dressed up in regalia. And then I was told later that they weren't related to me, but to my uncle's wife's side of the family. Fast forward, I find out that my uncle's wife's side of the family is actually on my father's side of the family, so they were indeed my relatives. Um, I've always been interested in family history and research, but we didn't go to very many family reunions up until maybe 2000. So as an adult, I went and I started, getting more and more curious about exactly what my family history was. Um, and I knew the ancestry was there. We just didn't have exact information. I'm one of the youngest. I'm the youngest in my parents' family, but I'm the one of the youngest grandchildren on both sides of my family. So a lot of my older cousins had information that I didn't have because I guess there were other relatives that were living, that they spoke with and knew and spent time with that I didn't get to spend time with, that were no longer here at the time I was born. So let me take this to 2020, the beginning of the pandemic,
Okay.
when I had more time to do research. I was doing my family tree on ancestry.com, and I came across a lot of people that had a lot of Virginia Indian tribes, a lot of famous, well-known people in history all over their family trees. And I'm saying, why is it that I keep finding people on both sides of my family keep tracing back to this Pamunkey tribe? So as I began to connect dots, I found out that not only were these people connected to my DNA matches, but they were also connected to me. Because at first I kept assuming it was the other side of the family, not knowing these were people that were in my family. So one of the cousins had posted, and we have the same last name, Coy, and he had posted, "We're Pamunkey, and I'm not arguing with anybody," on a message board because it's kind of hard for some people to take in when you grow up believing one thing and then finding out something else later. Like I knew the history was there, I just didn't know how much. So I didn't find just one Native American or American Indian great grandfather, but everyone traces back to tribes in Virginia on my
Wow.
mother's side and my father's side. And it's so crazy because on both sides of my family, we're Pamunkey.
A monkey.
Yeah, so my mother's side were Mattaponi and Pamunkey, and there's also some Cherokee and Blackfoot on my mother's side. On my father's side is more Pamunkey and Cherokee. So it's
Okay.
just amazing that I don't believe that when they were both living that they knew this. But my father used to always say, and I'm gonna put this nicely for the air, but he used to say, "You ninjas can be African if you want to, but I'm Indian." So
Wow.
Mm.
and
Mm.
and and
Wow.
he was quite the character, so we would just laugh at him. But then thinking about it, everyone that came to my house and met my father would always say, "Well, what are you? Or what is your father?" Is he Indian? Is he Cuban? Like, is he from the Middle East? He had a different look that didn't say he was necessarily African American for anyone's first guess. And he never accepted it. And he said very boldly that he was not African American, that he was African. He didn't come from Africa. And he said that he was indeed Indian. So I'm finding relatives on the Khoi side of the family. We have documentation that cousins have found going all the way back to 1767 is the last actual document from my fifth great grandmother, Sarah Khoi, that says she was born free in Powhatan, Virginia. So then now, as I'm connecting the dots, everything is making sense. Because how could you be in the state of Virginia in 1767, born free, after being taken on a ship through the transatlantic slave trade to Virginia and then set free? That makes no sense. But she was born free. Her parents were born free. My grandfather, my fourth great grandfather, Charles Khoi, her son, born free. His wife, Patty Hickman, born free. Her mother, Elizabeth Hickman, born free. Her mother, Chloe Hickman, born free. And all these people are tracing back to tribes, and they're actually still living and prospering on the land, their tribal lands. They owned land. My fourth great grandfather was a blacksmith.
Oh, okay.
And they owned acres and acres of land. Everybody had some sort of trade.
Now, were you born in Virginia yourself?
No, I was born in New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey.
Yeah, and my parents were born in New Jersey, but my grandparents were all born in Virginia.
All born in Virginia.
Yeah, my mother's mother was born in Leakesville, North Carolina, but that's right on the borderline of Virginia, and her mother was born in Danville, Virginia.
Oh, that's interesting. And do you have any idea how some of your family ended up in New Jersey? Were they running or?
It was a time, I believe it had to be in the late 1800s when they left Virginia and they came up to, on my father's side, they came up to New Jersey. On my mother's family, my mother's mother left, I would say North Carolina, Virginia, in 1901. But what we found out just last year, the year before, a cousin found me on Ancestry. And he is the great grandson of my grandmother's brother that we never even knew about.
Wow.
So when she left the South, she left 3 other children behind and took the 2 youngest children with her. So I can only imagine that it was some sort of considerable circumstances for a mother to leave for her 2 younger children and leave the other 3 behind.
Wow, that's sad.
Yeah, we may never know the answers to that, but she came to the Catskills Mountains in New York in 1901 when my grandmother was 3 months old, and she stayed there with relatives for about 5 years. And then in 1906, somehow she migrated to East Orange, New Jersey, and we've been here ever since 1906.
Oh, really? 1906? That's a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of my people ran to New Jersey. The Lenape people we married into. Jersey seemed like it was a hub for many indigenous people to come up and relocate, and that's very interesting that you ended up in New Jersey.
Yeah, Lenape territory, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I used to live in South Jersey, and a lot of people would come up to me and say, "Oh, you look just like a friend of mine. She's a Khoi in Woodbury." They said, "Are you related to the Khois in Woodbury?" And I said, "No, not that I know of, because I only knew my family from my father's parents, and and all of his siblings. I didn't know of any extended family." So my second great grandfather, William Khoi, they called him Billy. He was born in 1831 in Powhatan, Virginia. And we know that for a fact, it's documented. I have documentation that he had at least 40 children. He was married several times.
Oh, 40 children?
Yes. But then I found out from a relative.
He had a nation.
Yes. And he was a farmer.
He was a farmer.
Yes, he was very healthy,
Happy,
obviously.
huh?
Yeah. And I found out through talking to one of my father's cousins that he said no, it was more closer to 70 children. So he said if you ever go to Farmville, Virginia, don't talk to anybody because more than likely it's a cousin.
I had a friend like that. He was afraid to date anyone because he said his father carried his mattress on his back.
Yeah. So I'm finding it's crazy because I'm finding so many relatives, right? I'm 52, so I'm finding a lot of relatives.
You look
Some,
younger.
thank you.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm finding all of these relatives that are doing the genealogy, and I can't even deny this if I wanted to, because I try to disprove it to myself to say, well, maybe somebody just put this and maybe they just put that. And then I'm like, well, it's too many of us saying the same thing. And then a lot of them are still living in the same areas where we're from. Like they never left. My third great grandmother on my mother's side, her name was Sally Wynn. She was born on the Mattaponi Reservation. Once she left the reservation, as you know, I'm sure that you had to be registered in the county that you lived in.
Mhm.
So when they would register you, they wouldn't register you as a Mattaponi or Cherokee or anything. They would register you as a Negro or as mulatto.
Yeah.
And so they
Mhm.
reclassified us, knowing who we were, but it's like you get to maintain your indigenous identity as long as you stay on this reservation. But the minute you step foot off that reservation, and we got to classify you because we got to keep track of these Indians because y'all like to fight. So we got to know so we have to know where everybody is, right? And because we come from warrior tribes, right? So they want to keep track of where everybody's at, but they're not going to register you by your tribe. They're going to register you as a Negro or a mulatto. And then over the generations, that kept changing from Negro and mulatto to black to Negro again, and then to colored, then Afro American, and then finally African American.
Mhm.
And the whole time, my people didn't come over here on a slave ship. They're still in the same exact tribal territory that they've always been in since forever, since before Columbus, right? Even though he never touched foot here, but since before, they started coming over colonizing and enslaving, we've been here. And then even throughout slavery period in Virginia, they've maintained their freedom. Now, my fourth great grandfather and his siblings were taken by the church wardens, and I have this documented. They were taken by the church wardens um, because they said, I guess my great, grandmother Sally couldn't afford to take care of them. So really, not much has changed because conditions are created to put people into poverty, and then they come and say, well, you can't take care of your children, even though that's how the system was working, right? So they put the children into what they called apprenticeships, but it's just another name of slavery. But she
Mm.
actually sued, and it's documented. She sued and got her children back.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and she was awarded $125,000. And then
Wow.
she sued
What
someone
year?
else.
What year did you say? What year?
That was somewhere. Well, she was born in 1767, and so that was around 1790. I would say around 1790.
And she won how much money?
$125.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Yes, because they
That
took
was
around
worth
seven of
much
her
more
children.
back in those days.
So
Yeah,
that was a
yeah.
lot of money back then.
There's a lot of
A
money.
lot of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, but they took seven of her children, and she got all seven of her children back.
Wow.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I didn't introduce you to my co host. His name is Fierce Truth Seeker. He's the host of the Red Road East on YouTube. That's my affiliated channel, my sister channel, and he is also my godson.
Okay.
And he and I have been researching this type of paper genocide for about 30 years.
Wow.
So
Mhm.
he has a few questions and
Sure.
things to ask you and also to share with you.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm familiar with your show, by the way.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. Wow.
that's my
Wow. Oh,
baby.
that's beautiful. Wow. Thanks for the support.
Oh,
Um,
indeed.
yeah, I am so glad that you are on the show.
Thank you.
Um, because your story is something that um, really co-signs much of what myself and Firebird have been telling people for many years. You know, the paper genocide is real,
It's very real.
and I used to back in the days. I used to do research. They used to have a museum here in the Bronx, right up in Parkchester. It was a library, the Huntington Free Library.
Library.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this was way back in the days, way back in the days. And what you said about the Indians when they were on the reservation, talking about Virginia, um, I had come across that information in the Huntington Free Library when I was doing research for the book that I hope to have published by the summer.
Okay.
And I came across that piece of information that was talking about Walter Plecker and the Virginia laws regarding the Virginia Indians and things of that nature. And I came across this document in there and saying that an Indian is one once he is on the reservation. Once he leaves the reservation, they revert back to their true classification as Negro. So they
Hmm.
reclassified the Indians as Negroes, you know.
Yeah.
And you familiar with Mildred Loving?
Yes.
They made the movie about her
Yeah, the
story.
movie called Loving. Yes.
Yeah, and they did the same thing with her. If you looked at that movie, they didn't say anything about her being Indian.
Exactly.
They referred to her as
A
a black,
Negro
a
A
yeah,
Negro, right?
exactly,
or colored woman, right?
colored,
Colored
yeah,
woman. Yeah.
And
exactly.
see, this is something that it's like keeping the lie consistent, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
now, if you go back and say in the movie that she was actually indigenous or Indian, then all of her people, because you don't become Indian, African can't have an Indian. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to say all of these people in this community were also Indian
Exactly,
because we lived among each
exactly.
other in communities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like if you're familiar with Paul Henning, he wrote a series of books, Free African Americans in Virginia and North Carolina.
Yes.
Mm.
Every branch of my family is in that book. The Coys, the Hicks, the
Mm.
Hills, the Mosbys, the Hickmans. All of these branches of my family are in that book. That's those same families in the book are all of them are native. They are all Indian. They're
Wow.
all indigenous from indigenous tribes in Virginia. But because they were classified back then when they lived off the reservation as free people of color, that was just another phrase, a cover up for them being Indian. Because
Mm-hmm.
part of those families that lived off the reservation, the same families off the reservation were Negroes or free people of color on a reservation. They were from whatever tribe they were from. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like if we can keep you contained on this piece of your land, then you get to keep doing what you do to some extent because they gave them restrictions even on the reservations. But once you leave this reservation, you can't take that with you,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm.
because you have to be registered in the county. It's almost like walking around with freedom papers because it'll say on there, like for my grandmother, for instance, it described her as being 5'5", and this is my fifth great grandmother.
Mm.
5'5", dark yellow. That's a 5'5", dark yellow mulatto, no visible scars.
Mm.
Mm.
That's what her paperwork said.
Mm.
And then for my second great grandfather, right? This is two generations coming forward. He had to still be registered. So they was doing that for quite a while. So Walter Plecker wasn't the first one because they were doing this hundreds,
Right.
200 years before Walter Plecker.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't doing anything new. It's just
Exactly.
that he was definitely a monster and he was recorded for what he was doing because he was the one that was at the tail end of it when they stopped it. Because in his case, like the stuff I've read about him, like he would have midwives arrested for delivering babies and then putting on the paperwork that they were indigenous.
Wow, he
Like he
was
would
having
lock
them
people up.
arrested.
Like they were killing people and locking people up for saying that they were native. So what they just started doing is they just blended into communities and went along with the whole program and just said they were black because it was safer to be a Negro or colored or Afro American than it was to be an Indian.
Well, you
Because
know what
sometimes,
happened to him, right? He got hit by a car, and we're wondering, was that an accident, or he
yeah,
had so many enemies. Was it on purpose?
yeah,
But that's how he met his end.
yeah,
And he was a monster. And what he did to your people in Virginia, I mean,
it was
just
crazy.
horrible. It started all there across the board in Virginia,
Yeah,
with,
I
with,
mean,
his, with his certain amount of paper genocide,
yeah,
you
it
know.
was just really, a lot of this, like the research when I do it and I'm reading all these documents in the archives and going all the way back to like the late 1500s and 1600s. And I'm not just seeing what I've come to know as my tribe, but I'm actually seeing my direct ancestry because I'm a descendant of Kakakoeske, Opachankanoff, and
Now, how
Machachana,
did you
who was
find?
Pocahontas' sister.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Sure.
while it's in my mind, how did you find that connection? Through ancestry.com or
Well,
paper
through cousins.
documents?
Well, through cousins that have been doing the research a lot longer than me. And it was not just one, it's like several, like probably over 100. I lost track
Mm.
of how many people already knew this. Like they knew it, and this information was passed down from generation to generation. But what happened when my family left Virginia, we lost a lot of history, because a lot of them don't want to talk about the South once they come up here. Back then, they wanted to put that behind them. They didn't. I've had some family members that changed the last name,
Mhm.
so they changed the last name from Coy to McCoy for reasons like that.
Oh,
Because it
okay.
was just
Now,
Mm.
dangerous to be who you were off the reservation. Not that it was that safe on the reservation, from what I hear, but it was like you just try to, put those things behind you and move on with life for survival reasons.
well, a lot of people wanted to put it behind them, and others were afraid to say who they were because
Yeah.
of repercussion. Right?
Yeah,
Fierce truth
Mm-hmm.
seeker.
It's very true. Very true. Especially, um, how they were, trying to get rid of, a lot of the natives.
yeah. Because I had asked a cousin, I said, why is it, because it's like I'm almost 50 before I find out all of this like heavy information, like
Oh,
the
wow.
the proof of it, right? And I'm like,
Wow.
well, why is it that my family, I asked my cousin, why is it that my branch of the family didn't know this and yours did?
Mm.
You know? But it was even people on his branch of the family, I believe, that kind of knew it, but they're not as involved in the culture so much hands-on like today.
Mm.
Like he goes to all the powwows and he knows everybody, like the people that are enrolled and the people that are not enrolled, but they still come out for different events and stuff like that.
Mm.
And he's invited me to come out to a couple of things, and I'm getting to know people, just all over, people from all over, family, and then just people that are connected to the tribe that aren't enrolled, right? So I'm just learning a whole lot. But his grandfather, like kind of, I guess, like they say, like you might be like a chosen one, like the one that shows some interest.
Yes.
So I believe it was his grandfather, his great grandfather, like taught him like in detail all about the family and stuff. And then you have some family members, like I said, that still live down there, so they just know because they're still in the same place. They're still going to the same church, since like over 100 years. The family has been connected to like one church. My third great grandmother and grandfather, they were living in Manglehick when she left the reservation. They lived in Manglehick, Virginia. I still have family in Manglehick, Virginia. They owned a very large amount of land down there, so I still have family down there. The church is still there. So it's funny because I didn't know her growing up, but when we connected online, because she has a YouTube channel, and I posted a picture of my second great grandfather, and she said that, wait a minute, that's my third great grandfather's brother. And she's
Wow.
a historian. So then she was able to share a whole lot of information with me because this is what she does. She has her YouTube channel. And she said, oh, and then she gave me the breakdown of how we're connected to Kakaqueske, and all these people, but
Mm.
they've known because of oral history. And so I'm like still trying to connect the dots where you try, like I have it going back to like on some lines all the way back to 1500s, but then quite a few lines I'm stuck in the 1700s somewhere. And then when I did more research, I found out because certain court buildings were burnt down during the Civil War, like before and after the Civil War, they burnt a lot of records intentionally.
Now,
What? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
now the ancestors that you just named, the famous ancestors, can you share with the audience a little bit of their history and their contributions?
Yes, so Kakakoeske, she's known as the Queen of the Pamunkey. She was actually the ruling warrior of the Powhatan Nation in 1646. So she signed the Treaty of the Middle Plantation with the English, and it was the English crown that named her Queen Anne because she came into a meeting when the treaty was signed. They said with a very royal demeanor, because she was royalty. And it's always funny how people expect us, no matter what label you give us, they kind of expect for us to kowtow to white folks, right? But this is somebody who ruled a nation. So she came in as she was royalty. So she came in with that demeanor. And so they nicknamed her Queen Anne, and she was given a what do you call, an amulet of silver, and it's engraved, and it's in the museum now. I believe it's in the Pamunkey Museum on the reservation.
Mm.
Um, so she was in charge of the ruled the nation, the Powhatan Nation, and which after signing the treaty, of course they broke every treaty, right? So
Yeah, they
they,
break everything.
yeah, so they were attacked during Bacon's rebellion, and they were actually chased out into the Dismal Swamp for over a year. So she was out in the swamp for over a year just to survive. But a lot of Powhatan people and Pamunkey people were slaughtered during that attack. Opachankanov, he was Chief Powhatan's brother. He was one of my great grandfathers, going a couple of generations back from Kakakoeske. And he actually started the War of 1622, and he started the War of 1644. The War of 1622 went on for close to 20 years, and that's when they attacked Jamestown. But
Mm.
as in many planned, attacks, someone snitched, and so they got a little bit of a warning. And his belief was, if we don't fight, they're going to kill us because no matter how much land that we gave to the English people, and no matter how much we helped them survive, they kept taking more and more and demanding more and more. And so he said, this is like a matter of our survival because if we don't fight, they're gonna annihilate everyone. So
Right.
he was actually out on the field fighting when he was close to 100 years old. He was still out there fighting.
Yeah, oh,
And
that's like some of the Texas history is similar uh,
yes,
to your history, where the Mexican government allotted land to the whites, and more they wanted to, have more land and more cattle and more slaves.
Yeah,
And
greed.
that's what happened, you
Yeah.
know.
And
So,
then in 1644, I believe it was 1644, he was captured. He was poisoned when having a meal with another chief, and he was poisoned. And it was only then that they were able to capture him and take him into custody. They took him into Jamestown, and while he was in Jamestown, he was shot in the back and murdered.
oh no.
Yeah, so they've been killing us in police custody since the beginning
Oh wow.
for a long time. But he was a warrior, and he started two wars, and so that's part of my ancestry, and it explains um, a lot for me, how I feel so strongly about certain things, and I've been called a warrior and I have a warrior spirit, but now I know exactly where it comes from, because this what they call it, genetic memory,
Yes,
these
genetic
things that
memory.
we know and we don't quite know how we know these things, but it's there. And it was crazy because for a long time, I used to have this recurring dream of being in the woods. And I'm not like a camp girl, right? And I'm more like, fashionable things and, luxury stuff, right? But I had this recurring dream about being in the woods, and just at a higher elevation, slightly behind my right shoulder, there's a bear following me. And this is the same dream every time. And I'm
Mm,
like, I had this dream for years, and I didn't understand it. And so I was going out with this guy, and he's native, and he I explained the dream to him, and he said, well, you don't need to be scared of bears because it's probably your spirit animal. He said it's probably actually a protective spirit. He said because you never get attacked in a dream, but it's always over your right shoulder protecting you.
Right,
So,
right.
mhm.
I have, if you see here, can you see it? I don't know if you can see it good, but I don't know
Hold
which
it
way
up
it's
a little
going.
bit more.
Yeah, it's a bear. I had this made by someone in Oklahoma, and I have the earrings, and it has the bear on it because it's symbolic for
Mm.
me
It's beautiful.
that it's protective. Thank you.
Can you see it, Fierce Truth Seeker?
Yes.
The camera
Hmm.
froze. Oh, you can
Oh,
see
the
it?
camera froze. I'll show it
Oh,
again. I don't have
yes.
like a glare.
That is
My
beautiful.
phone is so
Oh,
horrible.
okay. Do it again. I think I saw it.
Can you see it?
Yep.
So it's
I'm sure.
handmade, and actually, I believe it's the husband that makes the silver, and the wife does the beading.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. So
You know.
I'm sorry.
Oh no. Go ahead.
No, I've always been very interested in American Indian textiles and patterns and
Mm.
designs. And it's so funny, right? Because I've always, always, always loved moccasins, right? If
Hold
ask
it up
any of
for
my
me now.
friends.
Hold it up again for me now. The camera's good.
Okay,
Wow, that's beautiful.
thank
Hmm.
you.
We were just
So
talking about technology. It has nothing to do with us, folks. It's the satellite.
technology, yes. So I always loved moccasins, right?
Uh-huh.
And I love heels and all of that, but my favorite shoes ever, boots, have been moccasins. And so my friend was teasing me as I've been sharing information with her about, my ancestry. I know half the time she's like, "Oh boy," because I'm like so into it, right? And so she's been calling me Pocahontas, right? And
Now I have to ask you a couple of questions there. Chief Hall. Go ahead.
yeah, so she says, "How many pair of moccasins do you own?" I said, "I lost track," right? So it's just it's part of who I am. It's not something that you wear or something you put on or somewhere you go. It's just a part of your spirit. It's a part of who you are. You can't separate one from the other. The person from the spirit. So
Hmm.
Right, right.
like some will understand, some won't. It's just who I
Yeah.
am.
Okay, young lady, back to Pocahontas. Matoka Can you kind of like fill us in with that history too? Because I
Okay.
know some of her family is very upset with Disney.
Oh, I'm sure because I mean, just the visual depiction is it doesn't fit who we really are, who we really were, and who we are, right? So people are expecting this more like an Asian look, and if you don't have that look, and then you're saying that you're American Indian, then they call you a pretendian, or they tell
Yeah,
you, I've heard people have been so mean as to call me people that don't even know me. I had one Pan African guy, right? That's like so heavy into what he's into, not understanding that we don't all have a blanket history, right? So you're not gonna argue with me about your ideology over my genealogy
I was going
because
to mention them too.
my genealogy is too
knew you would
heavy.
like her. I knew you would like her, Fierce.
Yeah, my genealogy is too heavy. Like you're not going to argue with me, and I don't have to prove anything to you. But this guy went as so far as to say that I was a self-hating N-word, and my
Mm,
ancestors came here on the bottom of the belly of a ship, just like everyone else's. So
mm.
the fact that so many, quote unquote African Americans, quote unquote Black people, believe that everyone that kind of sort of looks like us or fits into this federal category that
Yeah,
we've
certain
all come
phenotype.
here on slave ships,
Mhm.
and I thought I did too for a while. I figured that, my family being from Virginia, that certainly it had to be some slavery. Maybe that's even why it explains my complexion, right? But
Mhm.
then when I'm doing the research, yeah, I do have some European ancestry. But what happens many times is that European men married indigenous women because it was the women that held the land. And
Yep.
so they would marry the indigenous women and then turn right back around and marry or still be married to their white women.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So, but there was no master slave relationship in any of the connections with my ancestry, where someone was from England or from Germany or from wherever, Scotland, um, there was nothing like a slave relationship. Any relationship where someone married someone of a different quote unquote race, it was not a marriage or a relationship built out of slavery.
Out of slavery. And
Mhm.
you said you might be related to Chief Powhatan.
Oh,
Oh,
most
you are
definitely.
a descendant of Chief Powhatan.
Yeah, I'm a descendant of Chief Powhatan several times because in Virginia it's like a web of families, and Powhatan had over 100 wives because he wanted to unite the
Yes, he
nation.
did.
Yeah, that's right. He
Yes.
sure did.
We were talking about that yesterday. About someone was saying that's a European concept of multiple partners and things like that. I said, nope, it's
No, it's not.
been here forever.
Forever.
Right.
Just like the
Right.
two spirits have been here forever. This is not
Oh,
something.
absolutely.
Oh, you're gonna get a lot of hate now.
Well, I'm sorry, but I can't. I mean, it's historical,
Matter
so
of fact,
These
don't
are facts.
you have
don't beat the messenger.
matter of fact.
I didn't write the history. I didn't create the history. I didn't create the love stories.
No,
Oh,
Or
absolutely.
the arranged marriages and what went and what didn't. I'm just teaching the history.
because
It is what
Yeah.
it is.
as a matter of fact, one of you have in your comment section, you have Tasha She,
Yes.
um,
Okay,
and
hi, Tasha.
she did
Thank
a
you.
show. She did a show talking about the two
Oh,
spirits,
okay.
and
Okay. So
I had watched the show that she did, and
talking about what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
about the two spirits
About two
Yes.
spirits.
and the two spirit people, and she got a lot of flack and pushback from the those who come from the quote unquote Aboriginal community, and I co-sign on what she's saying because it's common knowledge,
Yes, common
those
knowledge.
who live this culture. We go to powwows, we're on the res. We know the history and everything, and for them, they didn't know. As a matter of fact, Um, I did a I didn't do a video, but I shared the information with someone else from that community, um, and they did a video talking about the two spirits, and that's how the those in the Aborigine community started finding out about it.
Okay.
And then about a year later, uh, Tasha, she did a video and she got so much hate. And I'm telling these people, I'm like, well, you obviously don't practice the culture, because anyone who practices the culture knows that. It's
Knows
common
it.
knowledge. And it's not like she was endorsing homosexuality or anything like that. I wasn't endorsing it. I wasn't saying pro or
You're
con.
speaking about it culturally.
Yeah, it's just something that is known.
Yeah.
She made a statement of fact, and
Okay.
they almost crucified her. you
Yeah.
know
No, so when I talked about my cousin who said to me, we're cousins, when I shared a picture of my great grandfather, that was Tasha.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
related on on our Anderson line.
You're
We're
related
related.
to Tasha? Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So my third great grandmother, yeah. So my third great grandmother that I said was born on the Mattaponi Reservation, that's also her great great grandmother as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
Wow.
I believe
beautiful.
I'm in
Wow.
the same generation with Tasha's mom, if I'm not mistaken. So Sally Wynn would be my third grandmother. I believe she might be Tasha's fourth great grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
we actually we've been trying to get together on these Zoom calls. We've only did one so far,
Okay.
trying to
Come
get together
on, Lord.
to
Wow.
pull some more information together, trying to plan a family reunion. So we got a lot of stuff going on. And then we met another cousin who was aware of this information, and her grandmother shared information with her. So I'm saying this thing is so big and it's so
Very.
undeniable.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. I'll just share this real quick. My mom passed away in 2020, and it was on my daughter's birthday. And before she passed away, I was living here with her, helping her out and stuff, and we talked a lot. And I had asked her about her grandmother, Salada Anderson Hill, and she was born in Manglehick, Virginia. And I said, "Do you know much about her?" And she said, "I just remember she was mean." And I said, "Mom, what do you mean she was mean?" And she said she was mean. My mother didn't bite her tongue. She didn't mince her words.
Sound
She
like
just
my
said,
grandmother.
yeah, she just said what it was.
Mm.
And so I said, well, I'm trying to, find some information because I knew there was some ancestry on her side, but I was at a block. I couldn't find anything else. I was at a brick wall.
Mm.
And then when my mom passed away, it was shortly after that Tasha had realized that we were cousins, and that opened
Wow.
up and
Small
knocked down that
world.
brick wall, and I was able to find like just a ton of information, and finding cousins on the other side of that brick wall that had all of the same information, and everybody knowing that we were Mattaponi and that we were descendants of Kakakoeske. So it was common knowledge for a lot of my family that's down there. It's just been a known fact since forever.
Mm.
So it's just crazy because it wasn't until my mom passed away that I was able to find that information. And then also I found that grandmother that she said was mean couldn't have been her grandmother, because that grandmother died 10 years before my mother was born. So it was
Oh, okay.
somebody else in the house when she went down there as a child to visit, that may have been a relative, or maybe my great great grandfather had remarried or something, but it was somebody else that was mean towards her, but it wasn't the grandmother that she thought was mean.
Mm.
Now, are you planning to register with any particular tribe that is part of your heritage, or you're just a free spirit and you're better off that way?
I'm kind of on a cusp because I believe that we, meaning my family that's doing the research, that we have more than enough information, because our names are on the petitions, they're on treaties, they're everywhere, right?
Mm.
So, and I believe a lot of people in the tribes already know who we are. So I'm not too sure. Was it last summer? I was at I know you know who she is, Maria Armwood, Walking Woman.
Mm-hmm.
She was a friend of the family. And at her funeral services, I spoke with Chief Taliono. And he,
Oh, my chief.
yes,
Oh,
and you
cute.
know we're Cherokee as well. So, and that's with my great grandmother Rebecca Hicks. And she she said to someone, I can't remember who it was, he said, go and get one of them applications and give her so she can enroll. So I was like, hold up, I got some questions first, right? And I wanted to talk to him more, but shortly after that, he got sick, and I never had the opportunity to have the conversation or ask the questions that I wanted to ask. And he was really close with my family. He was into martial arts. My cousins, they're
Oh, he's
very,
a martial artist. Yes.
yeah, they're very all into martial arts, and they studied with him and everything. And so I still have a lot of questions because I have on both sides of my family, I have Cherokee, but overwhelmingly, I have a lot of Pamunkey and Powhatan tribes in my family. So I'm not quite sure where to go with it. I have someone in my family now that is having quite a bit of a time. I won't mention her name because she's all in the papers and stuff with some tribal going on. And so my thing is, I want to get to know people. I want to get familiar with people that are enrolled. I want to get familiar with spending time around them, learning more about the history, learning more about my family history before I make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to be a part of people that don't want to be a part of me.
I do
I hear that.
understand. I
I
do
hear that.
understand. And it's a lot of that going on. I'm better than
Yes.
Hmm.
you, or you might get my benefits. And it's just a
Yeah.
sad situation, you
And,
know?
the saddest thing for me, it's like kind of heartbreaking for me because we got families that are enrolled and families that are not enrolled. And because of politics and greed, we were separated, you know?
Hmm.
A lot of us were, large amounts of people were murdered, you know? And so you would think that to have more people in your tribe, because to me, health is wealth, but not just health, but spiritual health, right?
Yes,
And,
spiritual health.
and family ties. And so, why wouldn't someone want to embrace people that are, they're still part of the tribe, whether they're on a reservation or not? Because a reservation doesn't make a tribe; people make a tribe.
Right, right, right.
So uh, to me, it would be more beneficial if some of the enrollment perhaps wasn't as difficult as it is as some of the stories that I've heard. But you have to see for yourself with anything because one person's experience may not be your experience. And so I just have to see because I'm very big on um, how people treat one another. You
Right,
know,
right.
'cause
That's very
I mean, what would be my benefit to enrolling in a tribe and having to fight to get in. I'm not fighting to get in anywhere. I'm not fighting to
I
be in
hear
a
that.
relationship. I'm not fighting to be in a tribe. Like that's not me. Either you
Hmm.
can appreciate me and I can appreciate you and we can benefit each other because I have a very, to say I have a big family is an understatement. I have a tremendously big family. And so if I enroll in a tribe, I'm bringing like 1,000 people with me at least.
you have your own tribe, huh?
I'm telling you, they just waiting for me. I have like literally my sister's waiting to see where I'm going. I have cousins that's waiting to see what I'm doing. So I have a responsibility to really make a serious decision about which way I'm going with this because it's not going to just affect me; it's going to affect my family.
Right, right.
And the generations to come. So when spirit moves me to make a decision, then I'll make it. But I'm in no hurry.
Oh, I do understand completely. I do understand a lot of people are sharing your same feelings on the matter, It's better
Yes,
not to be for many people than to be. I
yes.
do understand. Before we go, can you tell me a little bit about your book, Cover Me? I
Oh,
know.
comfort me. Yes. Well, it's a fictional book. It's available on Amazon, and right now it's only available on Amazon Kindle because I realize now I have to ask for help sometimes and getting it, put in print format. I thought I could do it myself, but I self-published it in 2016. And it's a book about a family, a woman who lost her husband and her son, and her family and the community kind of nurture her back to health. And everybody along the way has their story of survival of something that they've overcome to, just deal with everyday life. So it's about love and life and family and grief and overcoming and continuing on with life.
Firebird, can you type that name in the chat for people who may want to purchase the book?
The book is called Cover Me, right?
No, Comfort.
Comfort Me. I'm sorry.
Yes, Comfort Me. It's okay.
And put her name down so that they can reference it as well.
Now, the funny thing about the book, right, is that one of the characters in the book has ties to his American Indian culture and heritage. So that's mentioned in the book because
wow.
I knew even back then when I wrote the book in 2010 is when I actually wrote it. And so I included that in there.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna
now.
check that book
Do you and Tasha plan to collaborate and maybe write a book?
Well, Tasha has so much information. I don't know why she hasn't written a series of books already. So,
Smart lady.
Yeah. So who knows? You never know.
matter of fact, I need to include both of you in the documentary that I'm gonna be doing.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a little camera shy, so I know I'm gonna look at this later and it's like, why was my face like that? And why was I looking like that? But she's used to the camera. She does so many videos.
Yeah.
I'm in a longhouse today.
Yeah, see. Look, I just had to back up
to the ancestors, Iroquois,
Yes.
family gathering. We're family. We're all can go in here and fellowship.
That's it.
I just thought that I would include that as my backdrop today.
I need to learn how to do all of that because I said, let me find some place to set this up at where it's not, you can't see any of my clutter or any of my mess.
You're doing fine. I also see that you have another chief ancestors, Cherokee Chief Renatus Hicks.
Yeah, Renatus Hicks. Yeah, he was a relative of my second great grandmother, Rebecca Hicks. She's from that same line. So I'm still trying to figure out a couple of dots on that, but that Hicks family also coincidentally traces back to Powhatan as well.
It's yeah. We did a lot of intermarrying and trading and falling in love with each other, a whole bunch of things. I'm trying to read what OCO family, Tasha says.
Firebird,
that's beautiful. Huh?
Edit the title of her book. You left the C off.
Okay.
Yes. So part of that family.
It's called Comfort Me, right?
Yes, Comfort Me. So part of that that line, the Hicks line, that goes back to and connects with Kingfisher, Moitoy, Five Pillar. There's some of the last names that trace back to the Powhatan tribe, and then it's from Princess Niketi was one of my great grandmothers going all the way back. And it's funny because I saw a sketch on her on the old Shira Facebook page, and I was like, wait a minute. I look so much like her. It's crazy. And that's the crazy thing is that, phenotype doesn't lie. And So when you're wondering what these people look back then, they look like we look now.
Exactly.
And then we have proof of it, and it's archived, because that's one thing that, the Europeans did when they came here. They archived everything.
True.
You know,
True.
they took pictures and notes and not took pictures, but they drew pictures of the trees and the landscape and the people. And if you look at those very old water paintings by John White that were done back in the late 1500s, and it's like actual sketches of people from the Powhatan tribes and different tribes up and down the East Coast. And so you see what we actually look like Pocahontas and her sisters and cousins. All of the women had facial tattoos. They had the 3 lines on their chin. They had tattoos on their cheeks. I have, let me see if I can show you here. I got the same tattoo that Papa Kweske has, and it's on her statue. Can you see? I don't know where my arm is at.
Oh, that's beautiful. I see it.
Oh, put it a little more. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's awesome. You go, girl.
Wow. That's
Wow.
beautiful.
And it goes all the way around.
Wow.
Wow.
So this was like 5 hours of tattooing.
Oh man.
Wow.
That I got at 50 years old, because I've always wanted at least one tattoo, but I couldn't ever decide on what to get.
That's
So
beautiful.
I said it has to be meaningful. So when I saw that, I have not just tribal connections, but this was my grandmother. If not for her, I wouldn't be here, right? And
You
the
see
fact that
mine?
I'm sorry?
You see mine?
Yeah, I see.
Represent,
I wanted to ask you
sister.
about your tattoo as well.
Represent. Strong, powerful women.
Yes. Yeah. So, it gives me a lot of courage just knowing my history, my family history, my tribal history. It gives me a lot of courage, and knowing that with whatever that they've overcome, everything that they went through and everything that they did to survive so that we could be here today. Like, it's not cliche. It's not something out of his storybook, but it's out of my story. It's out of my
There
family.
you go. That's key, because like you said earlier, and like I was gonna, I'm glad you brought it up, because I definitely was gonna bring it up. You have these people in the Afrocentric Pan-African community. Whenever they see those of us who are indigenous with the darker phenotype, immediately, they try to insult you and say that, you want to be other than who you are, and things of that nature. And, they paint this blanket picture of where we all come from, which is, really ignorant.
It's very ignorant.
As if we all have the same story.
Yeah, and every family has a different story. Even my first cousins, like my mother's sister's children, they have a separate story on their father's side of the family, but we share part of a common story. So every single family has their own story. Nobody has a blanket history.
Story.
So you can't tell me about who I am when I have taken the time in years to do the research, to do the tracing, the tracking, the reaching out, the verifying. Because if I've said anything today, trust me, I have checked it frontwards, backwards, on the flip side, inside out, because I can't say, especially if you know who my family is, I can't put this out here and not be telling the truth, because my family will call me out faster than anybody else.
I do understand.
So I can't do anything but operate in the truth. And it's so absurd that they would say, look, all these Pan-African people, not all of them, but the few that have attacked me, I say, well, when's the last time you even been to Africa? I've been twice.
Right.
Right. I've been once. I lived there.
I want to go.
And my children are half Nigerian.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful.
They're Igbo. Their father's from the Igbo tribe. So I've been to Nigeria. I've been to Onitsha, Abuja, Enugu, Lagos, Anambra. I've been to all of these places. So the last thing I am is self-hating and not want to be African or disconnect myself from Africa, because I love Africa. Yeah. I love Africa.
Exactly.
And my children, my children, you can say they're, I don't know, I guess you can say they're African American because I'm American, as American as they get, right? Because this is our land, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their father is straight out of Africa, right? He came here as an adult, you know. So there's no way I can hate part of my children. I love all of them. You know, the parts they get from me, the parts that they get from their other side of the family. So it's not about self-hate. But what I will say, and I've said it to many people, is that my children are Nigerian. You know, they're half African. I am not. They're also half American Indian, which I
Right.
am.
Right.
So they have two cultures now, you know, because people like to say we don't have a culture. Yeah,
Right.
we do have a culture.
Right.
Even people who identify as being African American, we have a culture, you know? So I'm not disconnecting myself from anybody based on how they see themselves or how they identify. But for me and my family, this is what I know.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
very, very disrespectful for
Right.
people to try to tell you, you know, who you are and who you are not. You know, and I
Yes,
always tell people from that community, I'll be like, you know, hey, you know, there's no self-hatred. You know, I lived in Africa. Most of those guys who are talking about, you know, we're African, you know, pro-Africa, this, that, and most of them have never even stepped foot in Africa, you know,
yes.
and you know, so you know, if you're so African, then why are you not over there, you
Mhm.
know?
And the thing
And
is, if you do your genealogy, right? Because a lot of people will do like an ancestry DNA test and it'll say that you're 39% Nigerian,
mm-hmm,
10% from Cameroon, and it might show 1 to 2%, if any, indigenous North American, right?
mm-hmm,
But the thing is, ancestry.com is like many companies, almost every company regulated by the federal government, right?
mm-hmm,
So how can a company get that big in America putting out the truth about America?
mm-hmm,
You know, so some things are going to remain hidden, you know?
mm-hmm.
And then I won't mention his name, a famous doctor, right? A famous doctor that loves to get entertainers on his show. And the first thing he does is he finds one of their ancestors that was emancipated somehow from slavery, but then
I tore him up years ago. I tore him up.
he'll put a picture of a family that's totally unrelated to that person, right? And he
Mm-hmm,
does this on everybody. It's this one picture of a family that was, you know, enslaved, that has very Afrocentric features and phenotype, and they'll feature that picture of this family as he's telling them about their ancestor that was freed from slavery in Virginia. But the picture is not even related to the person he's talking to, and he knows that this person or that person that came to him and said they heard they had a Cherokee grandmother and this, that, and the other. That he could go further back and look if he really wanted to look and see who the person really is, but he won't. But look at
mm-hmm,
who's paying
Right.
him. When you look at who's paying him,
hmm.
right? And he's even been caught on video saying that he make a phone call to so and so and have so and so put that Oprah
Yeah,
Winfrey was Zulu,
Rick
or Oprah
Kittles.
says she's Zulu. Go ahead and put it on her stuff, right?
Yeah, they made Oprah Winfrey Zulu. You know, he called Rick Kittles and told him to make Oprah Winfrey Zulu, and then they went in the lab and they said she was Zulu.
Yeah, so you know exactly the exact person and video I'm talking about, right?
Oh, of course,
You're
yeah.
gonna live a long
Yeah,
time.
I'm
We were
talking about that
talking about
years
the
ago.
subject yesterday.
So they call a lot of people I hear calling him Henry Fakes, right?
Yeah, I talk about him in my book,
Oh man, it's
I
something
Ripped
else.
him
I
to
get so
Shreds.
angry. I get so angry, especially the video with Pharrell and the video with Queen Latifah. You can look at them. You can look at them,
Right.
right?
Pharrell
And
looks
it's
just
like,
like,
come
yeah,
on.
Pharrell. If you look at Pharrell, he looks just like that brother, that native brother on the original cover of the Black Indians book.
Hello, and not even that.
spitting image.
when you look at where their families are from and where, like, for instance, he's still in Virginia. He's probably one of my cousins.
Mm. Oh,
You
he's
know?
in Virginia? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's from Virginia. His people are in Virginia. I don't know whether he still lives
Well,
there
there
or
you
not.
go. There you
There you
go.
go. There you go.
I'm like, come on,
There
it's
you
just
go.
so painfully obvious, and all the writing is on the wall, and they left the breadcrumbs that they can't cover up, and
Mhm.
this is, the other thing with, like, one of my cousins posted on Facebook yesterday, and he's a family genealogist too. He's way back. I mean, he's got some stuff going so far back, but and he's
Mm,
from New York too. And
mm,
he had said, "Why do you think they took cursive out of school?" And then some of the people said that, well, it's useless, this, that, and the other, but it's very useful because I compare cursive with hieroglyphics
Mm.
because
mm,
after so much time and it's not being taught, it gets forgotten. And so for us, you know, how do you read these old documents without understanding cursive?
mm.
And even though they copied them and they're available on digital, records and stuff now, but in the next 40 years or so, when my, grandkids or great grandkids come along, and they try to go doing some genealogy, they won't even be able to read it.
Right,
Mm.
right, right, right.
So I think that has, I mean, it sounds like a stretch, but I think that has a lot to do with it because so many people are accessing these records. So many people are getting close to the truth. So many people like yourselves have YouTube channels and we're discussing the truth. And so how do you shut that down gradually? Because everything is a slow grind when we're dealing with these people, this federal government, right? These colonists, everything's a slow grind. So even though it doesn't take effect today, but it's going to affect generations behind us. So
Right,
Oh yeah.
everything is already in play. Everything is already in play because they're not like we're supposed to look and think about the 7 generations after us. They're doing the same thing, but they're not looking out for our 7 generations. They're looking out for theirs.
right,
Mm,
right,
mm.
right,
And so we have to be able to teach our kids cursive and how to read it. And we have to make copies of every record we find before it's not available, to research anymore. And just start
Mhm.
right,
making copies of everything and putting stuff together and connecting with family and connecting the dots. Because I found stuff and new stuff that maybe Tasha didn't know, and she had a lot of information that I didn't know.
Mm.
And then there's other cousins that have information, and then when we all now can get together and
Put it all
connect,
together.
we can put all these pieces together. And so I recommend that every single family,
Hmm.
if you are American, or however you choose to identify yourself, you better get a genealogist in your family because we talk a lot about reparations, but you're not getting any sort of reparations at any given time without
Hmm.
that's it.
having your genealogy together.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Already know the deal.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because they want to know, well, who are you from? Where were your people at during this time? You can't just say, oh, I'm African American or my birth certificate or my whatever says this. No, you have to have a family tree. You have to have some documentation to
Right,
prove where your people were and where they were at during certain time periods. Because, I mean, who's paying you what for what?
right, right,
You got to prove it. So you got to dig in there and find the records. And I know it's not easy, but it's easier when you find relatives to connect with.
right, right.
Hmm.
And for your own personal use, because they're not going to give any more reparations. I'm sorry.
Let me
Yeah.
tell
You
you,
know.
somebody couldn't give me $1 million today to take back everything that I've learned about myself and my family. You couldn't offer me $1 million and
Right,
for
right,
me to go
right,
back to not knowing. I'll never go back to not knowing or to ask
right,
someone I don't know.
right,
For not sharing what I know, because the other thing is some people in the family do in different families they do research, but then they don't share it. So every time I
True.
find something, I put it on Facebook. I've had cousins that say, "Oh, well, can you print out this for me?" No, print it out yourself.
well,
Like if
that's
it's
how
serious
I
for
found
you,
you.
just print it out yourself.
I said Karen Coy is very versed. I gotta have her on my show.
Thank you.
Hmm.
We have so much in common with Fierce, and it's just amazing. You're not trying to discredit anyone's history, just sharing yours
That's
and
it.
and the truth of your history.
Yeah,
There's a lot of debating. Oh, you're a pretendian, and
Hmm.
oh, or you're lying. No, you're just quoting what you know for your family, and that's all you can do.
That's
And young
it.
lady, I hope you start to write a book because I will be buying it about your
Oh,
family
thank you.
background. That is some awesome news. I mean, we have so much that we could still discuss, but the time is running out.
Yes.
And
I need to include her in my book too.
Yes.
Because my book is a collection of stories. I need to include your story in there too. Might as well.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, now you two have connected, and now you're a family, and you're coming in the longhouse together. And you guys talk and exchange pages on Facebook. You
Yes.
know,
Sure.
and Karen, we would love to have you back again.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe you and Tasha could come on together. With
Sure.
this truth seeker, and she can spit out some of her knowledge. I'll just sit back and wonder. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
I invite all phenotypes of natives on my show because everyone has a story to tell. And I want to thank the audience again at Native Voices Turtle Island TV, and best wishes and happy weekend to everyone. I love you, Karen. I love
Thank
you,
you. Love you
Chris.
too. All
And
right. Take care.
Thanks for joining us.
I'll
Thank
see you
you.
both soon. Farewell and Donadaka, honey.
Daughter Daga Hunty.
All right.
You guys.
Take care.
Thank you,
Okay.
Karen.